Hello, everyone. It's really great to be back. It is our third week, and we're really enjoying it. I hope you are. Again, it was wonderful for everyone to say where they were coming from. So please do that again. It was so much fun. And please keep the questions coming in. If we haven't quite answered your question from last week, we will. So please keep them coming in. So my name's Julia Robertson. I'm the founder of Garland Myotherapy. And I'm going to pass you over to my friend and colleague, Cushla Lamen, and she can introduce herself.
Hi, I'm also a Garland myotherapist. I'm also a puppy school tutor and a dog trainer, and I run puppy school classes, and I also run my own follow-on classes. So I've been involved in those for a fair few years.
Fantastic, yes. So Tilly and I have had a busy week.
I was just about to ask what you and Tilly have been up to this week. I can't wait to hear your adventures.
Well, and isn't it funny how the smallest thing becomes such a big adventure when you look at it through their eyes? And I'm loving that. Well, last week we talked about going to a supermarket or looking at the outside of a supermarket, which is what I plan to do. So on Sunday, I took Tilly and just Tilly. I left the girls behind and we went to Tesco's, and lo and behold, there was no one there. Strange. So outside B&Q, which actually was good, and other hardware stores obviously exist, was really good because there were some really noisy trolleys and all sorts of things. So first of all, she traveled in the car on her own for the second time, which is a big thing for her. She went in my front pack and we walked around the car park, and we socially distanced, and we walked around the queues. They were sort of doing zigzagging queues, and saw lots of trolleys and cars moving around, and also so that was one. She's also much more, she's having a few more challenges. I'm lucky, I've got a paddock, and I've also got a little bit of woodland with undulations, and she's been really struggling to see how to work out how to go down some really steep hills. So there've been lots of new things this week.
Fabulous. And was it really noisy in the car park as well? Was there lots of sounds going on as well?
There were, and we also had an ambulance with sirens going past. It was just, again, when you look at it through their eyes, things are going on in every direction, and people walking past, even though everyone was keeping a distance. Looking at the full footage of her, the film, you can see the nose twitching and the eyes and looking everywhere, really, really taking as much of it in as possible.
How long were you there for, roughly?
It's the filming I did was in real time, about 10 minutes. That was all from the time I arrived and got her out the car and packed her up. 10, maybe 15 minutes, no longer than that.
Wow. And then did she sleep when you'd finished that? Did she suddenly?
I don't think sleep is actually a term I would use. It was almost unconscious. Because she whined a little bit on the way. I did just a 10-minute, 15-minute drive. I didn't want to go too far. But on the way back, sorry, I keep remembering I must slow down. On the way back, I put her in the car and she just went out pretty much flat almost immediately. I heard nothing, and when we got back, I put her to bed, and she was asleep for 3 hours.
Yeah, that's incredible, and that just shows us how much, how much sleep the dogs mean, but actually how stimulating that kind of environment is to go for a short car ride, 10 minutes looking and taking all the sounds in and hearing car doors and ambulances and smelling people and taking all of that in, and how exhausting it is for them to then come back and actually sleep like that for 3 hours. It just shows us how tiring it is for them.
Really tiring, and she needed to sleep. She really did. There were a few dreams going on, but she was absolutely fast asleep.
Yeah.
Sometimes I woke up actually.
Sometimes some puppy owners say to me, I took them out and we went for a lovely, nice long walk, and they still weren't tired because I came in and they did zoomies all the way around the house and all the way around the garden. And that's a really good sign that actually your puppy's overtired. We don't need to walk puppies for any long distances at all. We just need them to be exposed to lots and lots of different people and social elements, and to see and hear and smell everything. But they don't need to go for long walks. And a lot of the time when they come home and do the zoomies, it's the adrenaline and everything's built up and they just don't know what to do with themselves. It's the endorphins are so high that they can't quite come back down from them. Or if you do take your pups out, that you just do, you know, it's more important that you take them somewhere with lots of quality smells and everything going on, like Julia did with Tilly, and take all of that in, but lots of short little walks, interesting little outings. So it's not, we really don't need to be walking the pups far at all. So
well, just showed that there was just, it was very interesting, but when you live it through her eyes, ears and nose, it's quite, you can see how stimulating that really is.
Brilliant. And have you managed to leave Tilly on her own at all yet?
Okay, that's getting a little better. I'm only doing a few minutes at a time, leaving her in the house. I leave her a little bit in the playpen with the door shut, but mainly just in a safe environment. Quite often now it's still with the grown-up girls. And I've managed to leave her about 5 minutes or so, and she seems to be fine. So that's my new aim. So what advice, please?
It's really difficult. I think it would be, it's anything like this in this time as well, because although you've got Tilly as a puppy, and this is something all puppy owners have to go through, is getting the dogs used to being left on their own. During this period of time when we've got a lot of people who suddenly we're all working from home and we're around for our dogs 24/7, is that even dogs that have been comfortable being left on their own suddenly get this used to this new routine of us being here for 4, 5, 6 weeks. And I think it's good now that some of the restrictions have lifted slightly, is that if you are going out for one of your, you're going out for a walk, then, leave your dog at home so they get used to that routine of not always having company, or leaving them in another room while you go and work on your laptop in another room. So they haven't always got access to you. But for puppies, it's really important that we teach them to settle away from us and are confident for us to confident for them just to chill out while we're not there. And what you've done with Tilly so far is perfect. 5 minutes, brilliant. I'd always make sure that you're leaving your puppy in a safe place. So puppy pen is ideal. If you are using a crate, you could use the crate, as long as they're comfortable in there, or use a room with a child gate, but make sure there's no wires or anything they can get hold of while you're not there.
Quite something, isn't it? And I'm sure she can compress her skeleton and get through sort of holes that big.
I mean, it's incredible, all the things that they find. Sometimes I say to my new puppy owners is crawl around the floor on your hands and knees.
That's a good idea.
So you can actually see that kind of level, because we look downwards and go, oh, this will be fine. And actually on your hands and knees going, oh, actually that plug socket looks delicious. So it's a really good way of doing it. So what I would suggest is when you first decide to leave your pups alone, set them up so they've been to the toilet, they've had a wee, they've had a poo, they're not hungry. And then give them something to keep them occupied. Like licky mats are brilliant. These are plastic.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. You can Google what they are and things, but spread something on really nice on there. I know you've been using pilchards with Tilly, which is lovely.
Yeah, the house smells like pilchards, but she loves, got to be in tomato sauce, of course.
Absolutely. Or cheese triangles, or one of the cheese spreads, all a couple of teaspoons of that spread all over the mat. Cheap pate, something really tasty and something really smelly, so that you give them that and then you leave the room. So what we're doing is we're pairing the scary experience of you leaving them alone, but we're distracting them and we're keeping them nice and busy. So they're so busy doing that half the time, they don't really notice that we're not there. If your puppy then suddenly realizes and starts doing the crying or barking or shouting at you, don't immediately go back to them. Wait for the split second they're a little bit quiet and then go up to them. because otherwise they learn that if I shout at you, you're always going to come back and let me out. So it's teaching them to teach them that relax settle as well. But it's something, it's so important that we teach our puppies that, you know, that they can cope on their own. And it is a big step, because for 8 weeks, they've always been surrounded by their brothers and sisters and mum and breeder. So actually teaching to be on their own is a huge step.
And I believe the licky mats also, the fact of licking and smelling, of course, that's very relaxing for them anyway. So it's putting them into a better state of mind to be left, rather than just shut the door and leave and see how it goes.
Oh, completely, because we're changing their entire mindset. You know, it's the fact that my guys always, you know, if I, you know, used to always give them Kongs when I left, but when they were younger, and they'd all be queuing up going, is it about time you left now? Because I know you've got a Kong in the fridge eating.
Funny how that's important than food.
But that was their, you know, like going, yay, she's going, fantastic, we get food. So it's changing their whole mindset about being left, because they get excited because I've got something really tasty coming my way. So it's just changing all that. It's putting the things on the head a little bit.
Yeah, really good tips, that. But you told me a story about someone that hadn't done this, and I think it's worth actually telling that story.
Yes, I had clients of mine a few years ago, and it was actually heartbreaking. Is they couldn't bring themselves to leave their puppy alone because they were just worried about, you know, it couldn't cope and it would be worried and be scared. So they didn't leave the puppy until I actually mentioned to them when we were doing some training, and this was when the pup was up to 6 months age, and they never left the puppy on its own. And we were doing some work, but honestly, we got to about a year and they still had never left the puppy without either one of them being there, getting a dog sitter in, or getting a family member around. And it got to the stage where actually the dog was just incapable of actually being left on its own. And that's when it becomes a real problem.
Yeah, real problem. I don't think we realize that at the beginning, but yes, we need to be able to leave them for limited amounts of time.
And it is difficult when you've got this gorgeous puppy sitting there with this big eyes looking at you, and you're like, oh, you know, can I, can't I? But just getting used to the idea of going, leaving them in a safe place, nipping into the garden for 10, 15 minutes, coming back and letting them out. It's no big deal. I'm back. Here I am. Nothing's happened.
Absolutely. I fidget a little bit because I am sitting on the floor and it's not my natural environment. No, that's great advice. Thank you, Cushla. I know what we're looking to bring into these talks a little bit more is a little bit more about the physicality and looking at activities and exercises for dogs. And the last couple of weeks we have talked about rugs on slippery floors. And I know there's been quite a few questions about that and quite a lot of response. Really, we cannot emphasize how important it is that they can get good traction when they're in the environment. Their anatomy is not built for slipping. Their anatomy is not built to be living on ice skates, because it is just like us living on ice. And let me just explain a little bit why. So this will be our first skeleton description. So this is no, you're not eating. Suddenly Tilly was interested. So this is the pelvis of a dog. It is plastic, but the important thing is one of the joints that we really have got to look after and can be really badly affected if they're slipping is this hip joint here. So here it is. You can actually see it. We can pull it apart, and this is a good hip joint. So you've got a ball and a socket. Great. And it's a nicely fitting one. This particular one is. So all good from the bony perspective. But what holds this in place and gives it stability, but also flexibility, is all the soft tissue that actually maintains that integrity to allow all these different movements that the puppy and the dog need to do to have and lead a full, healthy, mobile life. So what happens is, or what the anatomy of this pelvic region is, that this hip is basically wrapped up like a bandage in muscle and fascia and ligaments and tendons to hold everything in place, but to allow a lot of mobility, because it is a very mobile joint. But this sort of wrapping goes over the top, round the side. So sorry, the hip's a bit dangly. So it wraps, it holds the hip in here. There's muscle over here that holds it in. But the muscle that really becomes affected when you've got a slippery surface is this one that goes from here in the middle of the hip down about this far down the thigh. And it's called the adductor muscle. And what happens is that this actually holds the leg in to the body. So it actually gives the stability under here, and all the others give the stability all around. So you've got all round stability. When a dog slides on the floor, they do that. So immediately this muscle is damaged. And if they do it again, it's damaged further, and again, and it's damaged further. And then if both legs go, they have no stability or not good integrity underneath them, within their, from their groin region down to their a third of the way down their femur. They've got no stability. So this hip joint is exposed from underneath. And the moment that's happened, more muscle develops over the top to try and hold the hip in place, which creates a greater instability. So we're not talking about hip dysplasia, because even if you've got really good hips, you still need all this muscle support. So these adductor muscles can be really, really badly affected by slippery floors. So from an anatomy and long ongoing health perspective, it's really important to have good flooring for your dogs.
Yeah.
That's made a bit more sense, because we're going to be talking a lot about that, aren't we, Cushla, and exercises and activity that we can help develop those muscles and not damage them.
Absolutely. And that's the point we made last week about playing with puppies, you know, playing games with puppies. Brilliant. They need to play, but they need to have a nice stable surface that they play on, so they don't slip and they don't, you know, slide outwards with their legs.
Exactly. And I think one thing we said at the very beginning when we first started this is balancing the physical and the emotional and the psychological, and the type of exercise and activities. They tend to be good for both if they're the right thing, aren't they?
Brilliant. Wow.
Well, we've got a bit over. Yes, maybe because I can never stop talking. Please send your questions in. We'll be with you. We're coming back next week, aren't we?
We are.
We are coming back next week. So hopefully you've learned a bit today. Cushla, thank you as always.
It's been fun. It's
lovely. Bye-bye.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.